Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Are
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah, I can hear you. I
okay?
was just trying to put up my volume.
All right, man. How's my volume?
Yours is excellent because I know what
Ah.
you're doing.
Excellent. Why? Dude, so I've just been explaining it, and hello to everybody who's like logged on. Just so Coin and Yasmin and Miss Blaze and all sorts of people. So this is what happened on my side. I'm setting up, and I had a different room where I was setting this up. I was setting this up in
Oh,
the
okay.
living room, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then, just as I was setting it up, I get a notification saying
yeah.
President is addressing the nation at 8. So I'm like, flip, what? So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I did know. So he's addressing the nation starting now. And so what I did is I kind of like left the family to have the living room so they could watch whatever he's saying.
Oh, so you had to
And
move. Okay,
yeah, and then on my side, what I've done is I've also just put the screen on my right to the
okay.
TV in case he says something that's important that will affect what we're talking about now,
Ah,
you know.
sharp, sharp.
So I've done that, and then so what you're gonna do is maybe tell, because today there was an announcement in Zambia that kind of changes the complexion of how things are working, isn't it? The president has
Yeah,
extended
yeah. So,
this
yeah, extended to another 14
this
days, I
soft
think.
lockdown. You
Yeah.
guys have a soft lockdown.
Yeah, soft lockdown. We are not like, it's not hectic. It's just
Yeah,
social distancing, just being responsible. So
yeah,
it's quite hectic because not everyone is responsible. So, but the unfortunate thing is we only have few cases, well, 39 cases
yeah,
and one death.
and
So
no
it's
new cases in the past 2 days or something.
no, no new cases. I
Yeah,
mean,
I don't know what it.
from the information they're giving us.
Yeah, somebody's
Yeah.
gonna say it's
So.
because Zambia is a Christian nation. That's why you.
Yes, yes,
That's
because we fast a lot, so that kind of
exactly.
helps. So do you want
Yeah.
to record
All
this
right,
this
man.
session?
Yes, I'm going to try and record it. I found an app which will allow us to, once we're done, hopefully get the download done. So I've set it up on my side, so hopefully we'll be good as far as that's
Ah, okay.
concerned. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Now, a bunch of guys who've joined in now obviously saw the headline, and we're going to talk about the creative industry. So maybe for a guy or two who doesn't know what we do, should I start?
Yeah, yeah. So I think
Okay.
you can do an introduction in terms of who you are. I think before we even get into the matter at hand, is a certain people
Yeah.
who are probably joining in are your followers and they don't know who I am and the other way.
Vice
So I
versa.
think if you,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, cool. So on my side, I am in a confusing situation because most of what I do is voiceover. That's what I'm known for. So I do a lot of voice for stuff for, DSTV, Samsung, and other brands for radio, for television. And then I also, once in a while, dabble in music, not as much. And I also do stuff like consultancy and fixing deals in the back end. But the reason
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
funny because I was thinking about this the other day. Um,
yeah.
so people refer to you for what you do the most. So in my
True.
case, obviously, because of the fact that most of what I do, which is relatable to people, is voiceover. I mean, for example, I swim. You know, I haven't swum in a long time, but I can swim.
Yeah.
But you can't say Chilu's. I know Chilu is a swimmer. You know,
I see.
because
No, I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's minuscule in terms of my world. And so, yeah, so
Yeah.
most people know me as a voice artist, and I think basically that's in the introduction as to what I do.
Okay. Okay. So I'm a media entrepreneur. Why I say that is because my background is I've done a lot of different media things, like
Yeah,
design, a little bit of sound here, there, and also running brands. So that kind of is my background. But over time, I majored into directing because that's something that I was passionate about, and actually that's where everything began.
yeah,
From I'll say my background started 16 years ago when I
yeah,
picked up a high-end camera. So the high-end camera is, I don't know if you remember those small domestic cameras with a big tape in there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I picked up that camera and started shooting. So my first project was I needed to film a TV show, but I didn't have someone to film me. So what I did is I placed it in.
Sorry, that was the K Rock show, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh
So
man,
that's the, yeah. So the birth of that show was really I stuck up a couple of books and place a camera and then film myself. So I would frame the shot and jump into the shot,
Yeah.
record, and run back to stop the recording, and then I'd cut it up. Then it eventually ended up on TV Africa. I don't know if you remember TV Africa way back. I
Yeah, I
think it was.
actually worked there for a
Oh,
brief while.
really?
I used to do continuity on TV Africa. I'd
Oh,
be like, so
dope,
the
dope.
next program is the bold and the beautiful. I used to do that stuff.
Ah, okay. Oh, yeah. So, yeah. So it was the first place that actually they picked it up. They picked it up for free, of
Oh,
course. Didn't
brilliant.
get,
Yeah.
they didn't get, I didn't get paid for that. But it was, it was interesting for me to kind of see something grow and to be
Yeah.
able to know my potential. So it was just stepping up and getting to do something. So, but what I do now, I shoot commercials, and
Yes.
it's opened up a lot of doors. I've been shooting commercials here in Zambia and just across the continent. So that's my background.
No, excellent. And we
Yeah.
met because obviously our industries intersect. So during the
Yes.
time that we've known
Yeah.
each other for, which is about maybe just over 10 years,
Hmm.
you've directed a music video that I've done. You've directed me on a
Yeah.
commercial, like a full-on commercial with a set where you, Mr. Director. I've been on some of your productions where I'm kind of playing like a little small role here and there when needed, you know, and we've done a lot of good stuff together. So kudos to you, man. I've seen your work ethic. I've also seen, I know people don't like, you know, somebody saying I've seen your growth, but that's the truth, man. I've seen the
Yeah. Yeah.
journey
Yeah.
of you from 10 years ago when you were still the dawn in your game, but at the same time, you were still doing mind-blowing things, and you've always had a passion to learn and to improve and to always want to do big things. So, you know, I respect that about you. And so, yeah, man, kudos and salutes to what you do.
No,
Now,
thank you so much. Yeah.
should we go straight into, because you know the past through few weeks, I mean, I don't know how many, have just
Yeah.
kind of flipped our worlds, regardless of what you do, almost upside down. And what I'm seeing is two situations. I'm seeing guys who are coping very well because maybe
That's
they
me.
are able to work remotely, or they've figured out ways in which they can still make a living during this very strange time. And then I've seen also on the other extreme guys who are battling because they haven't kind of been able to take steps outside of what they've known all along.
Yeah.
And
No. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
obviously we're going to speak specifically about the creative industries because, you know,
Yes. Yes.
we have certain ways in which we make money. I mean, like, for example, performing artists who make money from doing live shows. All of a
Yeah. Yeah.
sudden, that carpet is pulled from under them, and they're in limbo because they can't get audiences into space. Guys who
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
conferences, that's also dependent on that kind of thing. And for example, two companies that I usually do work for, what they do is they do staging of events. So one
Okay.
of them, for example, did the 2010 World Cup. And so they kind of are a company that razzles and dazzles audiences by uh, big concepts and graphics and lasers and, you know, stuff like that. And right now, you know, no one, because of social distancing and things like that, can
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
an audience that's big enough for them to carry on with their business. So they have to shift the way
I
in
see
which
what you
they
mean.
work totally. So maybe we can start with some of the
Okay. I
things
see.
that you've experienced as challenges, and then I'll also speak from my experience.
Yeah, so personally, it's because what I do requires being on set,
Yes.
getting to do all these meetings, sometimes in person. But it's logistics where you have to end up on set and film. So that has
Mm.
been difficult because some of the big projects that I was pitching on and managed to get actually got moved, and some of them have an indefinite time when they will happen. So
Yeah.
that kind of shifted my world. I didn't know whether, how do I survive in a time like this where things are actually um, different. So
Mm.
I think it's a disruptive era, and looking at it from that perspective, I was thinking, I guess it's also in terms of how we respond is similar.
Yeah.
If you look at if you go back as far as blockbusters, they were the king
Yeah.
in that time. You were excited to walk into blockbusters, and then the first thing you heard that there was a Netflix, a streaming
Mm.
service, and the first thing I thought was, is it even possible to stream content? So I thought it
Yeah.
was a business that wouldn't work. at that time. But fast forward, look where we are today, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's also being able to recognize times of change, and this is a time of change. So in a time of change is we need to also be able to innovate in terms of how we do business. So I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. What we've been doing recently is I'm doing more animation, I'm doing more VFX kind of
Oh
content
yeah. Yeah.
as
As
opposed
opposed to shooting.
to shooting.
Yeah.
And now, you know, the cell phones we're using right now can create content. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's not the quality of the content in terms of how it looks, but
Mm.
it's the narrative. So
Yeah.
I think it's using the tools that we have to actually innovate in terms of how we create anything.
Yeah.
And I think even other businesses that are going through a lot is looking at, if say you have a store at the mall and it's expensive and they're still charging you rent, you might
Mm.
as well move out and work from home and then be able to kind of link with a delivery service that actually delivers your food across the country.
Yeah.
So it's just finding ways in it to enable you to do things differently. So I guess it's in a disruptive manner in terms of
Yeah.
how to approach everything that you do. Yeah.
Because like with every situation that happens, there are some guys who will capitalize from a problem. So
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
instance,
Yeah.
right now I think one of the guys that are milking it or that are having a good time are like we were talking about earlier, the guys
Yeah.
who own Zoom, because
Yes. Yes.
that
The one
that
that was
conferencing
created
tool.
in Zambia.
Oh, I saw that video. Yeah, but so that Zambian guy who invented Zoom. Okay, well,
Yeah.
so Zoom is making a lot of money. I mean, during from the start of South Africa's lockdown, which is now 2 weeks in, I
That's
cannot
crazy.
count how
2 weeks.
many Zoom meetings that I've been roped into because now there's a situation where, for example, somebody wants to do a voiceover, and we have maybe 4 people from the agency side, 1 person from the client side, and they all want to be in the session. So ordinarily, I would go to a studio and then meet all these people in
Yes.
one space. And then now what's happening is I'm still meeting them in one space, but on my phone screen or on my laptop screen. And
Yes. Yes.
I record from the studio. They listen to the stuff that I'm doing. I've done a thing. I mean, I don't know whether I'm, should be mentioning brands, but
Mm-hmm.
I've done a Zoom session with MTN or the agency that represents MTN for some stuff we did. And the other one that's popular right now is Microsoft Teams. In fact, I lie. I did a Microsoft Teams meet for the MTN thing, and then I did a Zoom thing for
Okay.
another Samsung thing. So anyway, generally, there are a lot of people who are using those technologies to virtually be in one place to accomplish something, and then once that's done, they
Yes.
move
Yes.
out. So
Yes.
so it's like we're having virtual meeting rooms, which are allowing us to still have continuity in terms of the work that we're doing. So Zoom is having a good time.
Yeah.
Somebody I
Yeah.
was with on over the
Yeah.
weekend was saying, what's the fascination with Zoom? Because Skype does something similar. And I was saying to the guy that, remember, Microsoft owns Skype, and so Microsoft also owns Microsoft Teams. So now you're hearing about Teams and Zoom, and I'm
Yeah.
sure Skype now is maybe just like a component of the whole Microsoft Teams ecosystem. So I think that stuff will kind of carry our world a bit more. I've got one thought which I'm going to share, and then I'll let you pick up on it. In terms of artists at the moment, I've found 2 interesting case studies which are going to help artists in a way. So there's a
Yes.
radio station in South Africa who said they're going to increase the amount or the quantity of local music that they're going to play so that the royalties for the local artists increase, and that, kind of cushions what local artists are
Okay.
doing. So I thought, that's a pretty cool thing. SAMRO, who are the South African Music Royalty Organization, they've also made statements, and they have a plan to take care of musicians who are members of SAMRO. So that's also a good thing. But the third one is something that I saw on Twitter, incidentally, which was tweeted by Holstar, Duncan Sudala, who
Oh
joined
yeah.
at some point. And he said what he's doing, which is interesting. I never understood why he was doing it. He goes on to say Spotify. And even though, like I've got songs on Spotify, and so do a number of other people that we know. So he makes a playlist, and then he says, guys, new Zambian music playlist. He puts it out there. But obviously, because now it's in a playlist, one of my songs from my old catalog, say for argument's sake, Njota,
Yeah.
starts getting airplay because it's in Duncan's playlist. And if I make a similar playlist for other artists and so on, it means those songs start getting rotation again, the more people listen to them. And that's, in a way, even though the stream revenue is small, that's a way in which we, as artists, as musicians, that can
I see. I
increase
see. Okay.
the income in a way. So, I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting. I mean, I don't know in terms of impact. I think more of us need to start supporting each other by doing playlists on streaming services. So and then sharing those links, because not only are you enjoying the music, you're also supporting your brethren. So
I see
I
what you
think
mean.
that's an interesting thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. I mean, if you look at those news item in the UK about how streaming services are actually gaining more in terms of revenue,
Yeah.
and also that they had to slow down the internet because they're saying that the internet will crash
Yeah.
because people
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
streaming 4K footage, you know. So
Yeah.
it shows that it's a time where content will be consumed a lot. So it's a great opportunity for anyone who's in the space of creating any form of content. I mean,
Yeah.
music is content itself.
Mm.
So a lot of people have a lot of downtime, and in that
Yeah.
downtime, they need to be entertained. So it's a whole different revolution that's happening right now.
Yeah, and the other thing, we spoke about this earlier on today. There are two kind of situations that people during the lockdown, or these restriction type periods, go through. So one is, you can wake up, watch as much Netflix or whatever as you can, go back to sleep,
Take a few
hit the
trips to the
fridge.
fridge.
So
So you
yeah,
find
that's
out that you're having 8 meals in a day
exactly.
when so the food that
All
you
right,
kept
Matt.
for quarantine is now depleting because yeah, you're actually
Yeah.
taking too many trips to the fridge.
Yeah, a friend
Yeah.
of mine, whose name I shall not mention, Offie, sent me a video. Sent me a video of him sipping like a glass of milk from his Johnny Walker glass, and so I said, "Milk," and he says, "Yeah, my Johnny Walker. Like, all his alcohol stock is finished, because right now in South Africa you cannot buy alcohol, you cannot buy cigarettes. That's all part of the lockdown situation. But
Oh,
what
really?
what what then happened? Yeah, yeah. I mean, you
I mean,
can't
I don't
do.
drink alcohol. I'm just curious. Like, why can you not buy alcohol?
I suspect, and I could be wrong, I think they were trying to maybe kind of beef up law and order in the country, and thinking that maybe if
I
people are
see.
sober-minded during the lockdown, then that might
Yeah.
have, I don't know. So I was teasing him about his Johnny Walker when he was drinking milk. I was saying that's Johnny Crawler. But what could happen in this situation is that you could just binge and be in the fridge and so on, or you could take it as an opportunity to beef up your skills by learning stuff either from the internet or reading books that you've kind of seen
Yeah,
for a long
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So I saw somebody today who put up something interesting. Usually the saying has been stay home, stay safe. And I've
Yes.
been saying that on a bunch of ads, man. Stay home, stay
Yeah,
safe.
yeah.
But this person put a thing which said, "Stay home, find yourself. Stay home, find
Okay.
yourself." Something like
That's
that.
different.
Which
Yeah.
which I thought is different, but it also speaks to where we find ourselves, because during this time there's the opportunity just to kind of like digest a bunch of knowledge, um,
Yes.
and kind of if you can learn a skill by the time we're done. I mean, that whole thing which says that
Yes.
within 21 days you form a habit, and we're in a lockdown which was 21 days, and so that's like enough time for you to
To learn
kind
how
of
to
change.
do anything, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I thought I was gonna be fit and trim by the time we're done. Let me tell you, that's not happening.
I mean, I doubt it's a time to actually to lose any form of weight because you're always at
Yeah,
home. So
yeah, yeah.
I think you can probably gain knowledge there as opposed to anything
Mm,
else.
mm. Yeah.
And for me, I'm in the same position. Is I've had to assess and also take accountability in terms of just an account of myself, like where am I going, what am I trying to do, and also it's also been a great time to spend with family. So the closer we have with family, it's
Yes.
actually helping that out a lot, and you find that you've been becoming more creative in terms of how you do anything.
Yeah.
And now my goals are clear in terms of just from a content perspective and what I want to do. I'm excited for this time, as
Yeah.
much as it's a time of crisis. But
Absolutely.
I think great things are actually born from a situation that is a crisis.
So let me
So it's like making that lemonade.
Absolutely, from lemons.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm going to tell you like it's a bit of a story. I haven't even told you so far. I mean, I think I kind of shared a minuscule amount of this information earlier today because I needed you to help me with some things. So um, I'm I'm under an embargo, so I can't reveal too much. But during this lockdown, we were able
Yes.
to shoot a commercial in my house with my family as the cast. So it sounds, I've never shot. I mean, I'm not you, but the director of the ad was on joined us using Zoom. The project or producer was also on Zoom. The technical dude who was controlling the camera, bruh, he was controlling the camera from Cape Town through my laptop, which was plugged to the camera. You know what I mean?
Yo.
Like, have you ever? So it's and it was like locked off shots. And I'm not a filmmaker. I'm nowhere near you, but it just goes to show that during time of crisis, when you know that you can't move around, you can't have a Kenny come to direct completely. Kenny can do that from a screen, which
I see
I
what you
don't know
mean. Yeah.
if you've and that opens up a whole new world because, for example, you and I have spoken about stuff that you want to shoot and in essay for different people that are our connects. And
Yes. Yes.
all along, it's been like, you when there's time, you're going to travel, whatnot. But it just goes to show that there are hacks which can make it such that if this lockdown was extended and you
Yeah.
needed to
Yeah.
shoot
Yeah. Yeah.
something for me, say, for example, argument's sake, I say,
Yes.
Kenny, I want to do a music video for my new song. And then you say, okay, organize a crew of 2 people,
Yes.
my 2 daughters come through. and
That's
then
a
and then
smart.
we get you in on Zoom, and then somebody's controlling the camera remotely, and we're fixing the shots, and you're telling us no, you can see a lot of light and glare coming from there. Shift
Yeah.
the camera, whatnot, because dude, that's what happened. We started shooting at 12. We wrapped at 10 in the evening. Yeah, I mean, it was a
Damn.
proper shoot, and it's
Proper shoot
yeah,
day.
yeah. So I mean, I can't say too much. You know what I mean? I'm itching to reveal a bit more, but I think the
I
ad
might
will be out
actually
next
might
week.
have an idea I was shooting that commercial because I was chatting to someone and he was like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's doing something like that. So it was
Also, you know
interesting.
who it is.
Yeah. I think I know who it is.
Yeah, man. You know who
So
it
the
is.
irony is just that it's you. So
It's your connect, man. It's your connect. So yeah, no, it's happened here. I'm still kind of reeling from how surprised I am that it's kind of worked. And right
yeah.
now there's approval. And fortunately, like in my situation, obviously I've got the studio. I'm right now in my studio. So there was a voiceover that was needed, and so I hooked it up. So two
Yeah.
jobs in one. And then yeah, let me not say too much. Before you know it, I'll say everything. That's one of my curses. I say too much. But yeah, it just goes to show that during this time, there are means and ways in which creativity is forced, you know.
Yeah, I
Now
see
the
what you
other thing
mean.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, the other
Yeah.
thing you wanted to talk about was, say the pandemic is over. What's happening now that will shift the way we operate past the pandemic? Because you had thoughts about that. I've also got some thoughts about what I think will happen in certain creative pockets or certain creative corners of the industry.
Yeah. So I think the idea of just being a creative is not to stay the same. So you enter into a creative space to learn, to understand some fundamentals and then grow. So I think what sometimes pulls us back is what is our standard. Our standard is really important in terms of just setting a standard. So when you know this is who you want to be and how you want to get there is what you need to work on. So
Yeah,
if your standard is really high, you place yourself against anyone else in the world that is doing great work,
yeah,
and you're able to tell that with creative work it evolves on a daily. I
yeah,
mean, what we're doing right now, stories was kind of like was on Snapchat,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
it's shifted from Snapchat. Then I woke up one day and was on Instagram. I'm like, oh flip,
yeah,
meaning that their share is actually messed up. So they're not in the same position of power as they were before. So to be in a position of power in terms of what you do, you need to always be progressive, be innovative in terms of being on the ball every day. So I think this offers that opportunity to actually sharpen your skills, to actually take account of yourself and be able to see that where is the industry going? What's the innovation that we're actually adding to what we do? Because television, for example, is like a dinosaur. It's a dying platform, and your account becomes a platform.
Yeah.
So if you look at right now, we have 30 people, right? So that is your platform in terms of how you create and in terms of how you put out information.
Yeah.
So we need to look at the tools that we have and kind of see where the future, we need to look at 5 years, 10 years from now in terms of where the revolution is going. Because is it the fourth revolution? Industrial revolution? Yeah. So I would say it's really more about research, as much as you research understanding your environment. Because some of the information we get is, I'm reading an article that's, from New York or something, and doesn't apply to my African circumstances. Even when people are talking about social distancing, it's a very difficult situation here in Zambia to actually, I'm privileged. I come from a home where I'm able to do that. But someone who comes from a house where there's 8 people, it's very difficult. So I think we need African solutions to African problems. And as Africans, we're actually really in a position of power because there's a lot of things that we haven't innovated, and it gives us an opportunity to innovate. Because just in Zambia, I think last year is when we started having transportation where you can actually order
like
transport,
equivalents of Uber.
like a Uber, and that's only last year. And food delivery was the same thing. So it's looking at where you are and what your position is and innovating from there, because nothing is really new. So it's looking at what someone else is doing and being able to borrow a piece of that and create your own DNA.
I
So
fully agree, man.
why
And before I give my contribution, I've just seen on the thing, so South African lockdown has been extended till the end of April. So it's practically 2 extra weeks added. So this is the part where I'm supposed to be crying. Anyway, we'll deal. But from what you're saying is what I also caught on earlier on in life. What I do, for example, in the voiceover industry, is I kind of study. I wouldn't say study. I'm curious about what's happening in the US and not so much in the UK, but the US sets the pace. And so, for example, the norm. So, for example, the norm in the US is that people do home recordings more than they go to actual studios. And they've been doing that for a long time. And so even when I was setting up my studio, I'd check out what they're doing in terms of advice for gear and all that kind of stuff. And I set this up based on what I was, getting from there. And the other year, I went to VO Atlanta, like a voiceover conference that happens there. For 3 days, I'm just getting all this information, and I come back to Africa and implement a lot of their stuff. And so when people hear that I'm recording from my car and the stuff is landing on continental Pan-African channels, they're kind of shocked. But it's not an accident. It's like I'm learning as I go, and I'm using what's happening in an industry that's a few steps ahead of us and implementing that now. So the reason why I'm telling you all that is because what's happened during this lockdown period is that a lot of guys who are voiceover artists, for example, didn't take that time to learn that stuff. And so when the lockdown was announced, it's panic stations, because the way in which people are used to operating is that they're used to going to studios and not able to figure out how to record on your own and do it of a good quality. Whereas somebody like I've been doing that now for years and I've figured it out. Consequently, what's happened in my world is that during the lockdown, I haven't even had time to hear myself think, because it's been busy with all sorts of jobs that are coming my way. And that's partly because if you have a preferred voice artist, now you can't get that person to record for you because they don't have a home studio, or they don't have the ability to give you the quality that you need. You know what I mean? So, for example, you're saying, for example, all the
Yeah.
stuff, man, this is probably like scripts from this week, you know,
Wow.
from various stuff. And it's been busy. So when people see
You
me
should make
put
a
up a,
donation. Send you my account details.
dude, this is like paying off like mortgage. And but hey, no, when guys see me post a video, like, you know, that fridge video that I posted where I'm going into the fridge and out,
Yes.
which I posted like that. I also posted another funny thingy, the Don't Rush challenge. Then
Yes,
I hear
yes.
somebody, you know, comment and say, "Hey, you must be bored." But those are my outlets to release this tension, because it's partly trauma from being, you know, 21 days in a lockdown, busy as
Yeah.
hell, and so you need those things to kind of like, you know, kind of like be a pit stop in terms of your psyche. Otherwise, you know, you can kind of lose it. Yeah. But yeah, back to the original point was that study what's happening in other markets, and
So now,
like yours, yeah,
you saying study what's happening in other markets. So I mean, you are Zambian. You've
mm,
been here, so you know the landscape is different from the
yeah,
landscape
yeah,
there.
yeah,
So what would you advise someone who's a Zambian and is a creative and is facing all these difficulties locally? How do
yeah.
they innovate? How do they survive in a period like this, or post the Corona period? How do they reach their goals in terms of where they want to get to?
So it's difficult to prescribe specifics, because obviously we're all on different journeys,
Yes,
and
yes, true.
you know, people have different opportunities that they unlock. So like I've seen one guy, you know, I'm not mentioning names, but he's a musician. And as soon as
Hmm.
this thing happened, there was the activist in him that kind of started coming to the fore. And there's a song that the guy does, and obviously an NGO funds it and whatnot. And so the guys will pick up opportunities like that, because they realize, like, you know, that's one way one way of doing
Yeah,
things.
yes, yes,
But also it's like a strange time, because you have to pick out where the opportunities are, and see whether you can utilize those within the space that you already are in, because it's
yes,
kind of
yes, yes,
useless to think that, okay, for, you know, lack of a better example, I'm a voiceover
yeah,
artist, right?
yes, yes,
This thing
yes.
comes about, and it's squeezing us, and then I think, flip, man, let me try and do something in logistics, because that's
I see.
apart from what you do. So you have
Yeah,
to kind of focus in on your world, and then see what you can do in terms of like picking up an opportunity. So like the guy that I'm talking
I
about
see.
earlier on, I'm not necessarily dissing, but I'm just saying that he understands that his audience might be more the donor NGO community in terms of
I
income,
see. I see. I
than
see.
the
Yeah,
actual fans of music, because the song might not be, you know, like so dope. Um,
yeah.
but with that said,
I was
man,
on Twitter. I saw that
yeah,
video.
man, we're gonna get in so much trouble, man.
Okay. Anyway,
No, but
we'll move on.
the other one's like dope, man. I saw another one, like various artists. Anyway, so like you have to like kind of like figure out within your world what, because sometimes what we also don't realize is that um even without knowing it, we're being prepared for stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And some of those things, if you are alert, will just kind of hit you in the moment where you need the most. So like you were saying, you with you what you guys are doing now, you're doing more graphics, more that kind of stuff in terms of what you're delivering to clients. But it's not like you
Yes. Yes.
started learning that stuff as soon as these restrictions were announced. That was
No.
stuff
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
already had
True.
in terms of skill
Yeah.
already. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so
Yes. Yes.
once you realize that, okay, we're squeezed, what other things do we have in our arsenal which we can use to deliver to our clients? So for in the video world, for example, a lot of guys now are using maybe stock footage or things
Yes.
like
Yes. Yes.
that in order, because you know that you can't really go out and start shooting stuff.
Yeah. So you
We
package a whole narrative. Yes.
Yeah, there we go. We can't if you're into podcasting or doing interviews, now that you can't physically go to Kenny's house to do an interview for your podcast. You use this, you use Zoom, you use other avenues and other channels, but
Yeah.
still, back to your point earlier on, still make sure that it's world class, because
Yeah.
you can't start dipping in terms of your standards just because you're squeezed now. You know what I mean? Like it
I see
still
what you
has
mean.
to
Yeah.
to remain constantly world class, because that's what sets you apart.
Yes, and I think just to add on to what sets you apart is like what you said is like I didn't learn how to create graphics today. It
Mm.
took a period of time, and it's the same thing. Is like you said, you are in the industry where you have other voiceover artists who are doing the same thing, but once the lockdown hit, they were impacted differently. So you were
Mm.
game ready. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I
yes,
think
yes, that's a
yeah.
good phrase, game ready. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think as creatives, we need to be game ready. You know what I mean? It's like the
Mm.
same thing where you want a big project, but when the project comes, you're not ready.
Yeah,
So it's creativity is very difficult because it's a lifestyle,
yeah.
and what you feed on is actually what impacts how you create.
Mm.
So I mean, if you wake up every day and what you're watching is I don't want to name uh, where the type of content is, but if the content is not great, it means that's what you're feeding yourself with. So if you feed
Yeah,
yourself with that type of content, which means when you create something that is similar to that. So if you set the
yeah.
bar really high, it becomes the same content you create because you reflect what you see.
Mm.
So I feel like how you line everything, your priorities in terms of
Yeah,
what type of content you consume, it becomes the impact of what you end up creating and how you line yourself. Same
that's
thing
deep.
is
Yeah,
like when, yeah, it's being game ready in terms of what you want to do. Yeah.
yeah. And the other thing is also, people frown on free. And there are a lot of things that I can point to in my life which I've done for free. Not like everything, but there's a bunch of stuff
Yeah,
that I've
yeah.
done for free because of the fact that, one, it's fulfilling, but two, it also somewhere along the line comes back as a blessing, so to speak. And
Yes, yes,
so
yeah.
during this period, I mean, I'm doing when the announcement was made about the lockdown, a bunch of the stuff I was doing was, wash your hands, those Corona announcements, and I did a few of them as pro bono, and some of them, obviously, if there's a
Yeah.
budget for them, then it's not going to be pro bono.
Yes, yes.
But there's value in sometimes considering doing certain things for free, and
Yes,
and
yes, yes.
especially if you strategically know that it might lead to something bigger. So yesterday, a guy, I mean, it wouldn't work, but I mean, there's a guy who reached out to me. So this is what happens. There's that show on Fox Life. I don't know if it's called Game Changers. And there's an episode which had me in it. And each time it
Oh yeah,
runs, I
yeah,
get
yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
bunch of
yeah, yeah.
messages from all over the continent. So this guy was telling me now, like, can you help me? And I'm explaining that it's difficult to kind of be available in the way that he thinks. And then he says, hey, but I can be your PA for free. So the attitude is right. It wouldn't work because of the way in which my life is set up, But
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
all I'm saying is that the attitude of I can do something because I'm going to get a lesson back is a
Yes.
deep thing, which I think sometimes people overlook. And during this period, it might be because a lot of help is needed, and you might find that you volunteer your services to an
Yes,
NGO
yes,
or whatever, but you're opening
yes.
yourself up to a world in which there's an ecosystem where you can be identified if you're doing good work, and it could lead into something. So yeah, that's the
Yeah.
other thought that comes to
Actually, what
mind.
you said is truth because I just volunteered to do some work for a known brand,
Yeah,
which and then this brand came back and they're now giving me a contract to do more content.
there we
But
go.
I approached them in terms of creating free content for them.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
kind of has value in terms of being able to identify opportunities.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I think also like what you say, doing things for free, it's really helped me out a lot. There's a lot of things I've done for free that actually open doors.
mm,
And but sometimes if you're actually doing something for free with the intention of immediately getting results, it
yeah, yeah,
rarely comes because people can actually see through you. They'll be able to see that, oh,
absolutely.
okay, so you're only doing this because you want this.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think when you do something for free, it needs to be sincere in terms of
mm.
how you approach it. So
But
I've kind of seen that has worked for me in terms of getting to volunteer, or sometimes I don't do something at my own cost in terms of
yeah,
the what I charge. So I end up doing it at a less of a price. But sometimes I need to build confidence because we're living in a world where there's a lot of options.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be in a position where you don't, when someone meets you, they actually don't know what you're able to do. So you need to be able to give them that confidence that you can deliver what you say you can deliver. So I think
Yeah.
it's different from saying that your standard is this and actually delivering that standard. Those are two different things.
Yeah. And I was just gonna say, like, from the time that I've known you, that's one thing I've seen you very good at. You'll identify something that you want to work on because of the fact that you either think you can do a great job at it and prove that you're able to. Maybe you want to put it on your portfolio or whatever. You are very good at identifying where you can put yourself in, give your service for free, but be that will still be like a world-class product. You will not kind of say like because it was free, you're gonna hold back in terms of what your input is. So salute, man. I've seen you do a lot of that kind of thing, and it's always worked out as far as I can see.
I know, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Because even when I met you, when we're doing that music video,
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah. Which you did at cost, I
I mean,
think.
I was a rookie.
No, man, like that video was
So when
tough
I
for his
when I
time.
watch it now, I'm like, yo, what was I doing?
Kenny's about to call me like, "Hey, Chilu, can you take down that video? Can you blur my name at the beginning?
So
Change
because
ground
even
zero to
you know,
ground one."
yeah, that was interesting time for me because I was brave enough to say I can do the whole project because think
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it. It was like a one man show. If
You were
you've been
doing
to my
everything,
sets
man.
now,
You were doing
yeah.
everything.
So
You were on camera. You like no, it was amazing. It was amazing.
yeah, it was
But now
camera,
now you're at
lighting,
that level,
editing.
man. Like you're that director who sits down and tells guys, "Okay, move the light." You just bark instructions, man. That's your new world. But
So
Kenny,
that was
here's
interesting.
something that
Yeah.
okay. You go first, and I'll go in after you.
Okay, so my question is, when I met you, you had a certain way of doing things. You were organized. You were not in my industry exact, because I mean we're in the same industry, but not in my
Mm,
type of department of what I do.
yeah.
But how organized you were, you would fit into anything. You know what I mean?
Mm, mm.
So for me, it was so. I came from a background where nothing was organized. You know, it's just like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
winging it.
yeah,
Throwing punches in the dark. So, and when I got to work with you, your principles in terms of how you carry yourself, of service delivery, it was so amazing that it impacted me in terms of how I did work after that.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So for me, you're an icon in that respect
This
of
guy's
being able
lying,
to.
people. This guy's lying.
No, like quick example is I would send you a voiceover, right? A
Yeah.
script, and I would get your script quicker than I would get a script from a person locally.
Oh yeah, like the voice of yeah, like to send to you by
Yeah, so
via
it's
mail.
like how you organize your work is really different,
Yeah.
and I applaud you for that. Yeah.
No, no, thanks, man. So this is like a little story. I think I told it once on a public platform, but I remember there was a time when the guy was saying to people that from the time that you book him to the time that he can be at your studio is minimum 15 minutes because he has a motorbike. And I was like, damn, but I don't like motorbikes, man. I went on a motorbike course, and so I thought like I have to
That's
compare it
funny.
to how I can do this. But now, you know what I mean? Like with the internet, you send me the thing. If I'm in the car, I've got my gear, you'll get that thing in 5 minutes while that guy's still on his bike to the studio.
Yeah.
So it's times change. But here's what I wanted
Yeah.
to say, and this is like an example I've used when I'm speaking to guys, but I don't think I've used it like in this situation. So, like back in Zambia or other communities, we
Yes.
sometimes rely a lot on the prayerful side of things. Like God will sort us out, and
Yes.
which
We
is
have
true.
a day
God
of
will.
prayer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But at the same time, I use this example. Remember this story of Joseph. And when Joseph was in prison, and he'd been like for a long time in the wilderness or whatever, and he had been persecuted or whatever, and then he had that opportunity to meet with Pharaoh. Remember that story?
Oh yes, yeah, I remember that
So
story.
yeah,
Yeah.
so now in that story, a lot of people will listen to the story and say that yeah, Pharaoh said to Joseph, yeah, I had a dream, blah blah. Please
Yeah.
explain what this dream means. And then Joseph went ahead and said the dream means A B C D. But
Yeah.
people have to realize that in my interpretation, let me not be
Yeah.
blasphemous, but my interpretation is that
Yeah.
yes, he was spiritual, and yes, he interpreted the dream and got favor by doing so. But at the same time, the next question was, okay, so what do we do now? Was Pharaoh's question, and then he said, okay, we're going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then Pharaoh said,
Yeah.
okay, flip, like, you know, who better to implement this plan than you? And the promotion came from A, B, C, D, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes we get into a situation where we kind of like don't realize that we still have to use logic and reasoning and all these things and planning and implementation in order
Yeah.
to succeed in life, you know. So some people might kind of say it ends at prayer and then you wait on God.
I
No,
see
man,
what you
you still
mean.
have to do your part. So it
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
long-winded one, but I think that's a lot of people use prayer as a crutch or as you know as an excuse for not kind of working hard and applying your mind. You need to apply your mind in order to move forward in life. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my 2 cents worth. Yeah. You
Actually,
don't
a
have to
friend of
attend
mine.
church tomorrow or Good Friday. No, you've had your sermon.
Yeah, I think just to add on being game ready, a friend of mine, Joe, just joined. So Joe is a producer.
Yeah.
Now, I remember when they came to Zambia to shoot a commercial, and a named director couldn't make it on time because of flight problems.
Mm.
Uh, so now they were on a shoot with no director.
Oh wow.
So that's why I'm saying being game ready is very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So I kind of took up that role and was directing the scenes,
Wow.
like on the fly, where you
Yeah.
actually read the script and then you get into it and then you tell the story. So I think it's being action oriented as opposed to only being prayerful.
Yes.
You can be
Yes.
prayerful. I
Absolutely.
think even the Bible says like you know, I don't remember the verse though,
Mm.
but it's like you can talk, but without your works, it means
Yes.
nothing. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
you can proclaim something, but if you actually don't do it, and
Mm.
they say the first rule of success is making your bed. So
Mm.
if you can start with your actions, you will be able to show progress in what you do. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like that same ad that I was telling you about, which Your Connect directed over the weekend. Because when the gentleman got in touch, you know, prior to shooting, the questions were, "Have you got a camera in the house?" And funnily enough, I had a camera that I was thinking of selling in December, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden, you know, now that was going to be useful. And almost each thing that they were asking for was somewhere in the house, you know, stuff that I've never used before, but the mind just like, oh, flip, yeah. Ethernet cable, yes, you know, sometimes even like thinking forward. So, I mean, this is going to sound silly. This is what I'm going to tell you now.
Yeah.
The day that the lockdown was announced, I was scrambling looking for, you know, that Camlink, that little device that allows you
Oh
to
yeah,
connect
yeah, 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 yeah.
your
Yes, yes, yes,
camera to your
yes,
computer so that you can do a Facebook Live thing. And I don't
yeah,
know why, for some reason, I thought I'm gonna do Facebook Live. I'm gonna do Facebook Live. I haven't done it, you know. And so I'm phoning all these shops between recordings. Do you have this Camlink? No. Some
yeah.
guys in Cresta tell me, no, we've got a black magic box. I rush there. I get to Cresta. The guy says, here it is. And then some guys behind him start complaining because apparently they were there before me for that thing. And I'm phoning everyone, dude. Everyone had run out of stock because people wanted to stream during the lockdown. So anyway, I
I
almost
see.
gave up. And then these guys, I called the shop in Centurion, and the guy says to me, "We've got one." So I'm like, "Cool, keep it for me. I'll come and get it. I'm going to a recording. I'll come and get it." And then he says, "Today we're closing at 3." I'm like, "Ah!" The recording was at 2, bruh.
Whoa.
And so I thought like this recording is gonna take 20 minutes. Then I'm gonna rush to Centurion, which is like a 40-minute drive, and get that thing.
Yeah,
And the recording, for some reason, I'm there, two sound engineers, not, you know, they're having technical problems. So now I'm worrying a
yeah.
bit as I watch. Eventually, the sound engineer says, "Okay, we can't get this right, Chilu. You record at home whenever you can." I'm like, "Thank you." Rush to Centurion, get that thing right. Come back, and it was parked here for like a week, two. And then when that guy now decides to say that we're going to do a shoot at home, and he needs to be able to stream what we're doing with the camera, I'm like, "Oh, flip, I've got a cam link." He says, "Oh, wow, brilliant." So, you know what I mean. So that's
Yeah,
accidentally game ready, or if you think about it in
yeah.
another way, you'd say it's divine intervention, because there's no way that these guys would have been able to direct that commercial without that little gadget, which I was rushing to get for no particular reason, or I thought there
Wow,
was no
wow.
particular
That's
reason.
that's that's
But
that's
you know,
crazy.
heaven was like, let's get this Chilu guy to work. Get a camera. Shops are closing at 3. Let's mess up that sound engineer. I think that's how it works, man. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
But have we been answering questions? I even like had points that I wrote down. You know, I don't know if we answered questions for people who are in the creative fields. I think we've done so, man. I'm seeing like a lot of fire emojis. That means we're doing something right.
yeah, or we're saying
Yeah, Zoom,
um
Microsoft. Yeah, I think we've done a lot of the stuff, man. I wrote down like stuff to help. There's one point here, which is random though.
okay.
We're talking about, you know, like stuff that you can do while you are indoors. I don't know if you know Eric Roberson.
No.
So he's like an R&B. So he's not famous. I mean, like very few people kind of know him, and he's okay with that. During the lockdown, or during, you know, the isolation period, he recorded a full album, which he released last week Friday, and with
Oh
songs
wow.
about you know, not those songs which are very blunt. I mean, I'm as a fan of music, I don't like very literal songs, you know. So it's not like the guy was
So it sounds
singing
like
about
edutainment of
virus,
some
wash your
kind.
hands, what. He was more speaking about, you know, maybe like the psychological things and whatnot. And it's a good album, man. It's called Here From Here. And yeah, if you check it out, Eric Roberson, he's on
Okay, I'll check
Instagram
it
as
out.
well. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, it was just an example of a guy who's using his time productively. And the one thing that he says, I mean, he says some deep stuff. He says what sets you apart as an artist is completion. That's the one word, completion, because there are many people
Yeah,
that we know who'll start a project but won't get to that point where okay, now it's
yeah.
complete. It sounds
I
simple,
see
but
what you mean.
to complete a project, like when I was doing my book, that thing dragged for a long time. But once it was
Yeah, I
in its
remember when
close,
you
like
first told me you're doing a book, 'cause a
yeah,
long time ago. Yeah.
years ago, man. And then once it's complete, it's like, whoa. I mean, there's a lot of work obviously you have to do after that, you know, to promote it or whatever. But completion is such like an important thing, which sometimes we overlook. So yeah, man, that's I think that's why I wrote Eric
Yeah.
Roberson on my
I
notes.
think adding on to that is usually what's difficult for us creators is say you want to venture out and do something new, you want to direct or you want to shoot or you want to just create, you want to create.
Yes. Yeah.
And usually when you create your first project, you suck at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you do it again and you suck at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to give up because you're not doing great. But the difference between you and the person who just started today and you who sucks at it and they put you in the same room, you have more knowledge than the person who's about to start.
Mm.
So it's actually being able to be persistent and resilient through that time,
Yeah.
and you continue digging, you continue working at it. So you suck at it for a very long time,
Mm.
but you have to continuously, be just continue what you're doing. But
Yeah.
in that process, what it teaches you is that every curve, every turn is a learning time. So you actually learn from all those experiences, and those experiences actually what are summed up to actually say you're a professional at what you do,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
because you get to know a lot more. So
Mm.
I think it's the time you need to put in is be able to uh, wake up every day and focus on what you want to do until you actually get there.
Yeah.
It's usually not easy because sometimes you're looking for where you can get information and you don't get information from people. But
Mm.
we live in a time where it's different from when I was doing it 16 years ago, when YouTube just launched, and the only place you can actually stream is going to a cafe and pay money for to use a
Yeah.
computer
Yeah.
that is actually slow. It's just loading stuff and
You like
for an hour. You know what I mean? And even
Yeah,
how we
yeah,
store data was different. It's like a floppy disk that only can
yeah,
you put an amount of pictures. So, but now you have everything at the palm of your hand. So anything you want to know, want to do, you can just click and search for it.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think I don't know if the challenges are different now, or sometimes we're just lazy. So I feel we actually have huge opportunities to actually grow in whatever craft we decide to take up.
Absolutely. I mean, like and obviously we're gonna have to start wrapping now. We've got like probably like three
Oh,
minutes. But
yeah.
when for example, I saw you on set when you were directing me on that the 543 pay
Oh,
ad.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And you know, a lot of people might just think, "Oh, Kenny is lucky or whatever." But you invest a lot of time in knowing stuff, such that when you're on a set with DOP and with all these other guys who are top of class in their own regards in industry like South Africa, and you're there
Yeah.
directing them, telling them what to do, etc. You are on par because of the fact that you've empowered yourself up here with knowledge from all these other angles, and you haven't kind of just decided to stay at to one level. So I mean that's something that I appreciate about what you're doing. I'm going to ask you to in a second maybe like give closing thoughts. I saw somebody right now ask about advice for voiceover artists and so on. And so I think for me the easiest thing to, I didn't see who asked that question. The easiest thing to say is I'm going to put up an image and a link on my Instagram stories once we're done, because on Tuesday there's a guy called Craig Ross, and Craig is having a free voiceover. He calls it a booth camp. It's like boot camp, but
Oh, yeah,
paid for.
I saw that. I saw you
Yeah,
put that up on your Facebook. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think
So
people who want to do voice should actually go to your page on Facebook and check it out.
absolutely. So that'll
Yeah.
be the easiest thing, because it's going to be a mission to kind of explain from the start, you know, how you can get into it. And then tomorrow, I think at 7, I'm also back live with a guy who started the voiceover workshop in Nigeria. And so we're doing a similar thing to what we're doing now. So, you know, maybe that'll be more voiceover focused, and you know, the person who
I
put that
see.
link
Okay.
can tune in tomorrow. We'll do that live thing. But yeah, do you have like closing kind of thoughts, or do you want me to shoot first?
Uh, I can go. My
Yeah,
closing thoughts are not actually, it's not a long thing. I would say never be afraid to fail, because it that's what sparks everything. It sparks who you become and how hard you go at it.
yeah,
So I would say just keep going at it, regardless of how hard it is and how impossible it sounds. You know, like I've done crazy things where I'm on set. I remember going on a set where they shut down a whole street, and in Joburg. Then
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
this Zambian boy who started shooting content from a high 8 camera. So it brings tears to your eyes, but you get to reflect and see the journey that you actually did not give up. You actually were consistent in what you do. You asked
Yeah.
questions. You are humble at everything that you try to achieve, because also being humble is important, because it helps you learn a lot more. Because
Mm.
sometimes when you just catch a little bit of flame, and on social media people gas you up,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you feel that you've arrived, it's far, like it's far off where you are. So it's always important to be consistent, and also be humble at what you do. You learn a lot more.
Mm.
um, I remember actually going.
Is connecting. Yo, man, I don't know if it's an hour, because at exactly an hour it just cut us off.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's, you know, that's how it's supposed to go. But you were saying, man, you had like a very good flow in terms of your final thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. So what's this? So what I was saying is, I'm waiting for people. Let's maybe wait for a few more people to get
All right,
online, so we close it. Yeah.
let me
Yeah.
tell a story in Mingo. Once upon a time. No, but while you're doing that, so for anybody who's been watching, who was watching from earlier, I kept looking this way, and it's not like I was being rude. I was trying to see what was scrolling on the screen in terms of what's been done with South Africa now that they've extended the lockdown. So the lockdown is going to be till the end of April.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and then also before you go, people are joining. Shout out to Levi. Levi's a filmmaker. Right now he's on lockdown in SA, but he was studying
Oh
in
yeah.
Malaysia.
No, Levi.
You know
Yeah,
Levi?
yeah.
Yeah,
Good
man.
guy.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
joined it.
yeah.
And then earlier on, I think Vatis also. Did you see Vatis' comment?
Oh yeah.
You're saying,
I
how
know.
do
I
I
couldn't
shoot
read
like you, Kenny, and how do I speak like you, Chilu?
It's funny.
Yeah, man. Like when these successful, he's back. These successful dons like Vatis start like try to make it as if they are humble.
Yeah.
How do we become billionaires like you, Vatis? Is the real question. Yeah. All right, man,
I see a friend of mine is a director, Mufundo. How's it,
okay.
man? How you doing? Yeah.
I haven't seen, you see, this thing is scrolling such that I haven't seen who's there. Maybe let's shout out a few before we go. Hearty, how's it?
Oh yeah, a
Graham
friend of
Tala,
mine.
hi. Yeah. Chisenga, how's it going? Let's
Hey
see.
Greg, how you
Humphrey.
doing? So Greg is a colorist.
Oh, nice.
You remember? I think he used to be part of Blade or something.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't
Yeah.
remember the
Yeah.
details, but
That's brilliant.
yeah. So Greg is
Well,
amazing. Greg gets to grade some of my amazing work that we've worked together on. Yeah.
yeah, man. Tell people where they can check out your show reel, because like there's some people who are coming from my world, obviously haven't been
Oh
exposed to
yeah,
what you do. So you're on
so
Vimeo.
when you go to my page, go to the bio link. Then when you click, you'll be able to see some of the things that I've worked on.
All right. Who else are we saying hi to? First Lady, hey, First Lady Nello. Timothy, how's it going? Dickens, Miss Blaze, how you doing? Wave. Katiwe, all sorts of good people have joined us today. Thank you so much. Hi Tick.
So
Or out there in Europe. Yeah. All right. Cool. So carry on.
So what's his name? Jay is in. He said good interview, gents. He's in Canada. He's a venture capital. He's doing good things there. Zambian guy.
Nice, making it rain.
Yes, we need that money.
Yeah. All right, man. So maybe we can go in again, and then the other things I'm gonna hopefully save the chat so it'll be available for the next 24, and I'm gonna try and hack a download so we're good. We'll be able to somehow share the chat after we're done that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I guess to close off, what I was saying is, you don't know how far you will get, and sometimes doors that will open will be shocking to you. So it's that resilience that you need. So if you're more relentless at what you do, you will definitely get to where you want to get to. And a lot of times, let me tell you a sad story. So I remember at some point when I didn't have a car, I went to someone's house to collect a camera because I didn't have my own camera. I needed to shoot something. So now to get back to where I used to stay, I needed to walk. So I was walking, and it was a rainy season.
Oh, flip! And you had a camera on you.
Yeah. So, but I was smart enough to carry like a plastic bag to put it in at that time.
Yeah.
So crazy story. So I was under a tree and it was raining.
And waiting for the rain to finish.
And I remember at that time when I was wet, but the camera wasn't wet. I made sure. It kind of for me was a point where I promised myself that I will make sure that I never have this moment ever again.
Yeah.
So I think your persistence will actually change the game for you.
That's so similarly. Like when I came to South Africa, I mean, I've made this public on a number of occasions that I came through after having been celebrated in Zambia for being on radio or whatever. And I was a waiter. So I was at college during the day. At night, I was a waiter, which involved like I was basically a broke guy. I was that guy in TLC's song. I was a scrub. Passenger side of my best friend's ride. I'm not trying to holler anywhere, But what I found is like on those long walks, because I used to walk a lot, man, like, 10 kilometers there, 20
Yeah.
there, and okay, not 20, right, 10 was the most I did. And there's a lot of time to think and to refine your thoughts during the time that you are in those situations, and all that stuff is beefing you up for one day when things are better. I mean, obviously, you've read my book, and you know that I didn't even like complete
Yeah.
grade 12. And so when you
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
at the situation that I find myself in, the only reason I say that is for somebody who might be in a situation where they feel that they aren't equipped to do stuff in life. You actually are more than you imagine. So I mean, speaking of cars, last story. So there's a
Yeah.
time when I got an opportunity to be at a radio station here, which is now called 947. Back then it was called
Mm-hmm.
94.7 Highfield Stereo. And because of the fact that I didn't have a car, and
Mm-hmm.
minibuses didn't move that late because I was doing the graveyard shift. So the shift started at
Oh yeah.
I think 1 in the morning, ended at 5. I would walk. This is like maybe half an hour, maybe more, just walking at night in Joburg, get to the
Yeah. Yeah.
station, do the shift, and then fortunately by the time I'd be done with the shift, minibuses were back moving, so I'd get onto one, right? And I remember
Yeah.
once the gentleman who was taking over from me on after my show, who also happened to be my boss at the time, Simon Parkinson. He came through and he says, "Hey, good show, Chilu, good show." And he says, "Oh, I'm see you next time, man. Drive safe."
Yeah.
And then I'm like, "This guy doesn't know that
Oh,
there's no way Chilu's gonna drive safe. Because
drive safe.
Chilu's a pedestrian of note." Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I think we've kind of wrapped it up nicely. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Be persistent. And even this time when it seems gloomy, take your time to connect and network and move things up. And you never know where things will lead. And also plant in terms of your network. I mean, like Kenny is a man that I have on speed dial when I have crises of many sorts, like earlier today, as he knows,
Yeah.
like, Kenny,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in this situation. Do you know? Because Kenny's network is wide, my network is wide. You never know how they intersect and how they can crisscross and do things. Yeah. VJ Creej has joined us, man. Big things, big things.
We do this.
Yeah. All right, man.
Yeah.
I can't see everyone who's joined, but I mean, salutes to everyone who's taken time to join us today, and hopefully some of the stuff that we've shared is valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see any questions anyway? So we can
I
maybe
saw.
answer a few questions and
All
wrap
right,
it up.
let's do that. Let's do it. As I look for questions, let me just say that you should say what's up to Yasmin with her wonderful cooking. It's good. Okay, somebody says they need to read my book. I see that. 2 idols in one spot. I can't see questions. Hey, Janice.
I see, Levi sent a question.
Okay. Is it on
How
this one?
do you
Because
know what?
Okay.
Oh, okay. How do you know when to do free projects knowing you have bills to pay? That's an interesting question. I'll let the legend answer that question.
Yeah. Oh man, no legends here. It's so sometimes just your intuition and your gut feel, because there's so it's Levi, right? Who's asked that question.
Yeah.
So like
Yes,
Levi's doing
yes, yes.
some dope drone footage and he's doing some good stuff, and I want to get like
Yeah.
some him to help me out once this lockdown is over. And if I speak to him nicely and say, "Listen, Levi, if you help me out, I might be able to unlock some doors or what." If he believes my story, then maybe he'll do it for free. But ordinarily, free is actually, when you're on the come up, free is very good. When you are seeing bigger picture and thinking that this might unlock something, like maybe in a market that you want to get into and you're not in presently, free is still like a good thing. But there are some people who will take advantage of you when you offer
Yeah, that's true.
services
That's
for
true.
free.
Yeah, that's true.
There's some
Yeah.
charlatans out there, man. Let's be honest. And so
Yeah.
you just kind of have to use your instinct. Maybe do a bit of research. Ask people within that network. If you don't know this guy from nothing, then maybe it's not a good time to offer your services for free. You have to do it like with a bit of what's the word? I wanted to say a bit of wisdom, but with a bit of there's a word, I can't think of it. With yeah, okay, I'll use wisdom because I can't think of another word. Yeah, you have to do it in such a way that that one, if you do it and you don't get anything back, you'll still feel fulfilled, and you can use maybe
Yeah.
whatever work you've done on your show reel, or there have to be reasons why free is an option. Or sometimes I do a lot of free for guys who I've done a lot of paying work for. And then at some point they come and say, okay, listen, Chilu, we don't have budget for this thing. We are an organization that also, besides the work we give you, we also support pink flamingos or something, So, so maybe you can
Yeah.
help us out there. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Because
Yeah.
you know that in the bigger scheme of things, that free is like you're planting just to kind of help solidify the relationship. But there has to be free. Free can't just be free. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
if you want to get more
Yeah.
experience
True.
on some angle of
Yes.
something,
Yes.
that's another good reason for free. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Kenny.
Yeah, I think free from, you also have to look at the position you're in, if you
Mm.
have bills to pay, then focus on paying the bills.
First, yeah, like
But
make that a
yeah, but
priority.
yeah, so that's like your first priority.
Mm.
But the other element is for you to grow, for you to get to the next level, sometimes depending on what you identify, because you also need to identify why you want to do something for free.
Yes.
So if maybe you're working for an institution that actually will help you in regards to how much you need to know in terms of knowledge, experience, that will definitely be helpful for you because you need the knowledge to make more money.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that's when free applies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also just skill wise, just yeah.
Absolutely. Got another one
I
there,
see.
Samuel. Eh?
Mhm.
How can we
Yeah,
have a lot
you
of
can.
Zambians working together? Because seeing you guys talking to us really good. We need more of this as Zambians. Zambians do work together, man. Like, generally, I think.
I mean, we're
Um,
Zambian, so
yeah, 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 yeah. So,
so that's
so,
a great
so,
example.
so it's just networks, you know what I mean? Because working together in terms of a generic concept is well and
Hmm.
good, but it has to be you're working together on specific projects. So, for example, am I hitting the mic? I don't know if you know, but for
No,
for
you're good. You're
example,
good.
there's some guys who reached out to me this week or this past week because they're doing
Yeah.
something for a Zambian. I can't say too much, but they're doing something for Zambia, and
Okay.
there isn't a budget for it. But they said, "Can you help out with planning or strategy for it?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah." So I'm inputting, my strategy and all that kind of stuff. Then after a while, I kind of thought, no, these guys just want the voice at the end of the ad that we're putting together. So let me ease off on the strategy part and just say, when you got the script
Yeah.
ready, holler at me. And that's a free thing, But I'm doing it because one, it's a new bunch of people that I'm working with, but it's an interesting thing for me because they are professionals and I know them from afar. So it's a good chance to collaborate and to
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
size each other up. And also on the flip side, it's a good thing to do something for the country. So that's why I'm involved with that, and it's for free. But at the end of the day, even if I don't get something out of it, I'll feel good, right here, and
Yeah.
it'll be cool. Hey, Doc, welcome. Is that another question for you, Kenny from Hearty? And he's calling you Uncle
How do you
Kenny, man.
deal?
If you're Uncle Kenny, I should be Granddad Chilu, man.
Yasmin, how do you feel about that? He's calling me Uncle Kenny. Okay, so he says, how do you feel about changing dynamics creatively and still maintain authenticity? Authenticity is a big word, which I personally abuse when I'm pitching for something, because that's what sometimes I want to hear, like this thing that we're creating will be authentic. But authenticity is sometimes in your experiences, in your research. And to answer your question in terms of how I deal with changing dynamics, is right now it is a changing dynamic. We are in a position where life is not normal. So like a friend of mine said, this is the new normal. So you kind of accept the position you're in and then innovate from there. So like I said, personally, I'm doing animation and VFX to actually produce content. And that is, it's not me working on it, but I have a team that's actually remotely working on it. And we're actually not even in the same room, but we're actually working on the same project.
Yeah,
So that's how you actually innovate based on the circumstances. So the dynamics always change but your strategy has to change with it. You're changing with the times. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say.
All right. We probably need to take like one more question.
Yeah.
And then we need to do a part two, man. Like part two, part three, part four. This should be like a series.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think get into more different things in terms of challenges
Yeah.
and
I
yeah.
see Louis Ars is asking if we're going to save the stream. Yes, the stream will be saved for the next 24 hours, so you can watch it from the beginning. The first part, which we did, is already saved, and I think you can already start watching that. Musty's got a very complex question. Even scared.
Yes.
I was going to say, no, we don't have time, Musty, we're out. Does
Let's hear
population dictate the market
it.
size of our entertainment industry? Also, how are intellectual property rights taken in Zambia? Okay, I'll broadly kind of maybe touch on the first part. I think it does in a sense. I mean, like, Musty, where you, I don't, oh, because that's Zambia. All right. So Zambian population isn't really huge in terms of context. I mean, like South Africa has,
Yes, yes.
I think, 60 million, maybe we're over that at the moment in SA. Nigeria is like huge, you know. So I think the bigger your population, obviously, that dictates a lot in terms of budgets from advertisers and marketers, your reach in terms of audiences and how you strategize and so on. So, for example, if you're in the US and you are dealing with maybe just Atlanta, you can be huge in Atlanta, and that market can sustain you.
Yeah.
Outside of Atlanta, people might not ever know you, but you might be huge enough to kind of have an audience that will buy and stream it at a big enough size to then make you live comfortably. So, for instance, because I've been saying for example a lot, so yes, yes. For instance, uh, the formula that's used, maybe not now so much because we're moving from selling CDs, but there used to be a formula which said something like from each CD sold, the artist maybe gets 20 cents, and the label gets, you know, another amount, which is perfect if you're working in a very big market, because that 20 cents with a very wide audience amounts to something significant. But if you then take that same model and then transplant it and take it into Zambia and say an artist will get 20 ngwe from every, you know, whatever the cost of a CD is, because of the limited nature of your audience and your buying public, that will create a very different outcome to a market that's bigger, if that makes any sense. And so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
how
yeah.
come you find even when deals are being done by network providers like MTN, and they talk about how they've you know, paid a guy like Banky W. I'm just, you know, pulling a name out the hat. I'm not even too sure if Banky is with an endorsement deal with MTN. That figure will be big compared to if the same company was to structure a deal with one of our local artists. And it's nothing to do with how the artist is perceived or respected. It's sometimes to do just with how big the market is and how big the reach will be if you get a guy to endorse your brand in a market that's big. So I think it ultimately does play a part, and that's why I think there are other things that we have to do differently. We have to apply our minds to be able to maximize and live comfortably, and also just kind of be aware that we're living in a market that's very different from some of these
Yeah, yeah.
bigger markets. So when my last example is when, for example, I said for example again. I should stop saying example, but when MTV decided to come into Africa, um, and somebody got a hold of the document which was related to their strategy about how the MTV-based rollout was going to be. They had about maybe 4 markets that they had prioritized. And guys were like, no, but why are they prioritizing like Nigeria, Kenya? I forgot which other two. I think it was Ghana or some other country. It's because of numbers. If you land in
Yeah.
Tanzania, for example, the first time I went to Tanzania, we're driving and I was telling the person who was driving me like, this place is huge. And then I say, it's bigger
Yes.
than Lusaka. And when I said that, the person looked at me like, how do you compare Lusaka with? They gave me a look.
Yeah.
And I think the more we travel, the more, you know, we engage with different countries and appreciate the size of these things, then we'll start getting
Yes.
context in our minds. First time I was in, there's that big departmental store in New York. I was there in 2016. And that was
Yeah.
the first time that I actually appreciated Diddy and how huge he is, because you're in this huge, huge store. in a
Yeah.
huge city like New York, and then there's a whole section which has Sean John, or I think it was, or one of Diddy's brands,
Yeah,
and
it should be
then
Sean John at that time.
yeah, I think it was Sean John, yeah, yeah. And I was in there, and in that second, I just thought like, flip, Diddy is huge,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
outside of that, you see him on your screen in Africa, you know what I mean? You listen to the music, but the context only happens when you realize how a person is operating in a market that's so vast and so advanced. So I don't know if that answers part of your question, but I think it does play a role. Azumalenge, how are you, Toela? Who I'm just saying hi to a couple of people while you get your last thoughts there, Kenny, and
Yeah,
Maria. Yeah,
I'm just
and
looking for a question then.
yeah. While you're looking for
Uh,
the question there, Tony's joined. Super
what's
photographer.
up,
What's up?
Tony?
What's up? Um, yeah, that's probably all
What
the questions.
what's your take on the current creative landscape in Zambia?
You want to get
I
that?
can answer that. I can
Yeah.
answer that, but I think I'd like you to answer that as well from your perspective.
Okay.
So my thoughts is about 16 years ago, there were not a lot of creatives and there were a few creatives. So knowledge was only spread amongst those creatives. And the old story I keep telling, there was no YouTube. YouTube was born, I think, a year later, which was YouTube should be 15 years old.
Mm.
And we didn't have access to stream stuff to be able to get information. So everything was instinct and reading. So if a document was created 3 years ago, that's the information you have. So um, I think now we're in a position where we have all the power in our hands. So I think the landscape is actually it's an industry that's growing. It's way better than what it was before, and I think there's also a lot of room to grow because sometimes you might reach a stage where you're stagnant. So I think I've seen a lot of creatives have reached like a certain roof level. So the idea is to grow from that point and be able to. I mean, Zambia is only one market, you know. So like Chilu was saying, the numbers are, you know, Zambia is it's a small country,
Mm.
about 18 million now, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Whereas I was in Ethiopia with Yasmin, and the population there was 100 million. I was like, what? You know, 100 million people,
Oh
that's a
wow.
different ball game in terms of
Yeah.
product, and when you sell a product there. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, I think the landscape is great, but we have to keep pushing because I think we also need to put ourselves at the global standard and be able to maneuver based on that and see what someone is doing in New York, what someone is doing in Japan, what someone is doing in China, what someone is
Yeah.
doing in South Africa, what someone is doing in Kampala, in Nairobi. So all those things actually are factors to how our industry grows.
Absolutely. So I'll give my take. I'll just answer this real quick one for Gowdens, who's asking what software was being used to control the camera from Cape Town into my house. Just pulled it
Oh
up.
yeah, quick one
Yeah,
before you answer that.
yeah.
So Gowdans is a Zambian. He's based in New York.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so when I was in New York, I actually met Gaudens, and he's
Excellent.
done amazing things. So he's edited music videos for everyone that's famous.
Oh, brilliant.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Man, and
he's got a
he
port.
was tuned in on the first half when we were talking about the controlling of the camera. That's dope. So
Yeah.
the software. So what it is I gave my control of my computer to the guy in Cape Town using TeamViewer. So he logged in and then he installed software. So I didn't even see what software it was. So I was searching now, and he used Imaging Edge Desktop. So my camera was connected to sorry, the laptop was connected to the Sony camera. It was the A7. You've got one of those, and was connected using the USB-C port on both sides. And through that, he was able to control and do the settings. And even when it was camera roll, he's the one who was pressing the
Yeah.
the roll thingy from Cape Town. So yeah, that
Yes.
was that was sick. So in terms of my thoughts on the industry in Zambia, we're still in a sense, from my take, is that we still have a lot of creatives who are all things to all people, you know. So the guy will shoot, he'll do his own final mix, he'll do his own editing and stuff like that, which is cool. But at the same time, when you go to other industries and other territories, you find that people are very specialized, which is a good thing. I mean, you know, like maybe now in this climate, it might not be so good. But I mean, I still think it's an amazing thing, because when I do my stuff as a voiceover artist, I'm not even thinking about the mix. I do not know how to equalize and do fancy things using the software here. All I know to do is record my voice at a good quality, send it to somebody who is a sound engineer, and then they do the magic on their side. And I think a lot of that, I think with time, should change, so that when you are working on a production with somebody from Zambia and the guy tells you, okay, we're good. I'm just going to get the picture and do the edit, then I'll do a rough mix, and then I'll do the final mix. And I'm thinking, but this is one guy. You know what I mean? And so I'm wondering, like, how will this production come out when it comes back? Because the different guys with different specialities who are meant to be within that you know, chain. So I'm not, you know, I'm not too sure whether it's a bad thing, but I'm still touch and go when I hear somebody tell me that he's going to do everything. About what the outcome will be, because they're different people who can have an input, you know. No, world class. Because what we're striving for, as we've been saying in this whole talk, is world class, man, world class.
Yeah,
man, Kenny, we need to do a part 2, bro. Like we probably need to
wrap this
Becky
one up.
on the phone blinking. Yeah. All right, man. So any last thought? That was your last thought, so I shouldn't even say any last thought. We'll be here for another 2 hours. Kawunda, how's it going? Mr. Fashionista has joined us.
Kawunda, how's it?
Yeah. All right, man,
I see a focus pull I worked with on some job.
Okay.
So like him, like what you said about departments is, like you've been on one of my professional sets. You see how many people are running around, and you know, you like back home here, I work with Yasmin, who's my producer for some of the projects that we work on. So everyone plays their role in terms of what they do. So like Kawunda would be a person who handles wardrobe and different things. So it's when you connect the dots, you see the value eventually in terms of what you do.
And on that thought, because I've seen this a bunch of times, you have to kind of be confident enough to let other guys shine on your production, because at the end of the day, that glow and that gloss on your product will be the result of many hands working together with the same vision. So don't be intimidated, no, if I give this guy this part, he's going to outshine me and client will hire him next time. There has to be a kind of mindset where you're letting people do their thing so that your production is up there. And my 2 cents as well, you know, as we come to a close regarding musicians, is that there are a lot of guys who are putting out music straight from the computer onto radio, straight from the computer onto streaming service, and completely missing a good mix and a good mastering process. So I mean, like one of my favorite artists, one of my favorite artists from Zambia, he put out some song, man, like some years ago, and it was like, whoa, this song is good, but it's not banging when you put it on, you know, in a club. It's missing that gloss because they didn't go to the right person to master it. You know what I mean? So I think we should also, I mean, like Paul Cruz is doing an amazing job. I don't know if he's logged in, but he's doing a great job in terms of mixing and mastering.
An interesting friend of mine just logged in. His name is Jake Hart. I think he's based in Atlanta or Las Vegas. I don't remember, but he's put out like it's like a software where you can generate all these contracts from in your media industry. So they're standard contracts that you can actually edit and then use that to you know, to negotiate what you do. I think he can explain it better, but I think
maybe you can just put the link or something in the comments there.
So that would be interesting.
Yeah, man. So I think that's the thing. Like I still get people asking me once in a while about Njota. And the reason why that song sounds banging in clubs, part of the reason is you actually, because I think we had to get it mastered for the music video, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and I was on the internet. I won't kid you. It's probably like for days, trying to find like a world class guy who would master that song so that it sounds beefy, and landed up with I just forget his name, man. I should check on the internet. But he's mastered stuff for Madonna, Linkin Park, Dave Collins. Dave Collins.
okay, okay.
He's based in Los Angeles, I think. And so sent him the files. TK from Roma side had equalized it to a point, and then that guy did some magic to that thing. When that song bangs in clubs, like damn. But partly because of the fact that there was an investment in that aspect of it, and it's not
Yeah,
like
yeah.
an expensive thing, but mastering is like critical in terms of just getting that gloss onto your song, you know.
Yeah, I
So
see what you mean. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's like, or like final mix when you do a TV production, or like a good editor when you do a book, you know. All those roles are critical, you know. So yeah, that's me, man. I think I'm done.
Yeah, same here. Jake kind of put up his website, so you can go
Has
to
he?
that
Okay.
website. You'll be able to see in terms of how you can get legal contracts in regards to stuff in media, and in terms of also
Yeah.
negotiating royalties and all those different things. So he's got an interesting package there. Yeah.
All right, super. And if I forget, I mean, like you guys want to do voiceover and stuff. I did say there is on Tuesday a free workshop being conducted by Craig Ross. So I'm gonna try and put the link on my Instagram stories so you can attend it. It's free. You know, usually that thing costs, if I remember correctly, it costs a lot of money ordinarily. So when I saw free, I'm like, damn, yeah, that'll be a good space for you to check out like some good information. And then also tomorrow, like I say, I think at 7 o'clock, I'm back here with Emmanuel from Nigeria talking voiceover specifically. Yeah.
Dope.
All right, man. You gotta sign it off. Seal it with the closing prayer. No, but we need to do a part two, man. Like for real.
Yeah, so we should do a part two. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right, thanks very much for everybody who's logged in. Let's do the last bit of shout outs, man. I'm gonna miss some names, but who do I see here? CJ, what's up? Lenge, how you doing? Super Ken, like the Presidento, how you doing? K Bangs, is that Eminent? 507, Beryl Gashuri, VJ Ken, how you doing? We've said hello to Bro Tony, Weekend, Chancellor Jr. Hello, hello. Jake. Okay, we've spoken about Jake. What's up? Yeah, man, and everybody else. DB Mumba, how you doing? Also in our field. How's it going?
Creative
Wayne.
Kingdom, what's up?
Yeah, oh, Creative Kingdom had some good contribution. I saw Creative Kingdom being shouted out for something earlier on. Yeah, man, I think we're done, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
That is everything. All right, cool. Thanks once again. Blessings. Let me go and see how the family is dealing with the extension of this lockdown.
Let me do the same.
Yeah. All right, man. Greets to the family.
Okay, cheers. Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody. We'll
Yes.
do a part two, definitely. So we'll do a
Absolutely.
part two.
We'll let you know
Yeah,
when that's up on socials. Kenny's guy will do
yeah.
another graphic for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
All right. Bye.
Cheers. Cool. Bye.